Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of To Become Family. This episode's a little bit different. We're so excited to have Katie, aka Catherine Bogner, back and to chat with her about her new book, all about Lent and Holy Week, and to just like pick her brain about all things Catholic education, catechesis, how to do this as a family. Um, so selfishly, but we are just super fans of the stuff that she works on and all the recommendations that she has for books and projects and activities. She's so creative. So follow her on Instagram if you have any doubt on what to do about anything liturgical living or
This is great
yes.
because we try.
Yeah.
We try during Lent to do things with our kids. We do most of it.
Yes. But I pull a lot of ideas from Katie. So,
I'm happy to hear that.
yeah. So, all right. So that's my plug for you. But do you want to let the audience know who you are, your own life instead
Yeah,
of how
sure.
Monica thinks you are?
No, I mean, actually, it's actually really like it's still very, very humbling to be like, because I do have this website, and I actually was telling someone earlier today that I was updating some files because Lent, of course, is like really big for traffic on the website because everyone's looking for tools. And I was looking at some things, and I'm like, oh, this is year 15. Like I've had my
Wow.
blog for 15 years, which that just absolutely sounds like nuts to say out loud. So, anyways, it's kind of nice. It's really cool and still surprises me and is very humbling to hear of people who are using the resources. I know that sounds dumb, but sometimes I like put them out there and I'm like, la di da, no one will ever see this. And, here we are recording a podcast together about books and all that stuff. So, anyways, okay, so I am a Catholic school teacher, but I was a public school kid, like all the way through pre-K through college, and actually taught in public school for a few years before switching to Catholic school. And in the midst of all of that, while teaching in public school, and then with my first Catholic school job, I was also a parish DRE. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but like little tiny town, itty bitty parish, like it's not a full time job. So I really have done while my feet are like firmly planted in Catholic education. That's my day job. Like I really feel very passionate about supporting parents and catechists and volunteers who are also doing education with their kids, whether it's at home or through parish, catechetical programs or youth groups or things like that. So kind of what grew out of that was I started creating resources because I was just on fire and had this awesome experience at my Newman Center in college and had an elementary education degree and just wanted to put it to good use. So I started making all of these tools and wanted to share them with people. So the easiest way to do that, I discovered, was just to put them up on this blog and then people could get to them themselves. And it kind of took off. It's sort of weird, but so I have a website called Look to Him and Be Radiant. And one thing I'm really passionate about is everything on that website is free. I mean, I'm going to make some recommendations for books. Of course, I can't give all of those away for free, but everything I create is free because I just want it to be easily accessible for parents and grandparents and catechists and teachers because our faith is so good and so beautiful. And I just want to make it easy for us to pass that on to the kids in our lives. So that's a little bit about me.
Gosh, I love that sharing your passion and your heart, but also your gifts and talents for creativity and yeah, putting that to good use for the education of children and so good. So thank you for your generosity in that. I would love to hear more. We have such a variety of listeners from couples who are newlyweds or engaged and starting to like think about their future family to young couples that have little toddlers and babies and they're also starting to think about, okay, now my family has started, what am I going to do for their education? We have some that have kids knee deep in school. Can you share a little bit about just your experience in different types of schooling and like what, I don't know, that's a very open-ended question,
Yeah,
but like
no, it's a great
what do you think
question.
about that discernment process and how can you, I don't know, help people who are like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what to do.
Well, I love that you specifically use the word discernment, Monica, because it really does need to be full of discernment. Like there is not one right, holier education choice for any particular family. And so I really think it needs to be something that you as a family like reevaluate like with every kid and sometimes even every school year. And I don't mean that like in a crazy like you're like trying everything new every single year. You know what I mean? But like you really do need to think about what does this child need? What options are available to us because that's huge too. You really need to think about What are the Catholic schools like in your area? What is the homeschooling community like in your area? How are the public schools? So I really think that we can't play this this Catholic war where we debate things, and I hate that, because really there are beautiful things about, I'm just mentioning those three. Of course, you've got co-ops and all kinds of other hybrid situations, but I know good, holy Catholic families who are educating their kids using the public school system. And I know good, holy Catholic families who are utilizing a parish Catholic school. And I obviously know good, holy families who are homeschooling their kids. And all of those can be good options. And really, it takes discernment. So that's the short answer.
Yeah, beautiful. And are you then, now you're middle school, Catholic school,
Mm-hmm.
are you seeing any trends in the kids as far as it could be like catechesis, it could be evangelization, it could be even just like human formation that you wish more parents were like aware of, to be like, hey, keep an eye on this. And
yeah. So I will preface by saying I am at an excellent Catholic school, and I know that I'm biased, obviously, but we have like the most phenomenal. We've had two pastors. We have a new pastor this year who has just come in on the stems of a phenomenally strong pastor who built like an awesome foundation, and like the school is just running, the parish is thriving. And then our staff is just awesome. And we have, I know it's not common in Catholic schools to even have like a primarily Catholic staff. I don't know if people are aware of that. And like our staff, like not just classroom teachers, but almost the entire staff are practicing Catholics, which is huge. Our Catholic identity is really, really strong. We have catechesis of the Good Shepherd for our younger kids. Some really, really great things going on with our older kids. I know that I'm biased, but like there are. And so I feel like I'm in this like sort of like golden, perfect Disneyland situation, but nothing is perfect, of course. And so I have 150, literally exactly 150. It's kind of weird this year, 150 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And so while we're in this like phenomenally strong Catholic environment with supportive priests and availability of the sacraments and a solidly Catholic staff and amazing principal, there really are some things that you see. So I think like human formation that you mentioned, that kind of seems to be affecting everything. And so that's one thing I think I would watch out for. And I'm not going to slam technology itself, because obviously we're using technology in a good way right now. That's one of the things that I tell my kids all the time, that technology is a tool that you have been given, and you get to decide how to use it. If you're going to use it well, if you're going to use it appropriately, if you're going to use it as a tool for good, like you get to decide that. But the fact that kids have access to technology at such a young age really has started to affect more and more their like communication skills, their interpersonal skills, their ability to like problem solve face to face, and like their desire for like the constant like need for the next thing. Like the pacing has to be so fast, and they have to be, I don't want to say entertained, because that's kind of a, people use that as a like overall arching. I don't think it's necessarily that. I think they're just used to like everything coming at them at the speed of light and everything shifting super quickly. And so when we try to slow down and do something like, read a book or something like that, it's really hard for them. So there's a lot of, I don't know, that's what popped to mind when you asked that question. And so that would be one thing I would say parents to be aware of, like that it's okay for your kids to be bored. It is okay for your kids to have silence in their day. It is okay for not every moment of their day to be programmed and scheduled and filled with stimulation. And so this isn't just about cell phones, because that's another act of discernment that every parent has to do for every kid, right? But really just to like allow your child to be a child, and it's okay for them to have those moments within their day when they're not completely filled with, content, programming, etc., because that will allow them to do something like sit in a classroom and listen to a discussion when maybe they're not the one speaking. It will allow them to read a text that isn't maybe necessarily what they would have picked up on their own for entertainment purposes, but they can like gauge information from it. It will allow them to sit quietly in a church during a holy hour. Like all of those things are kind of built on that basis of we participate in life, but we don't have to have everything fed to us super, super, quickly, if that makes sense. So yeah, kind of a combination of technology, over scheduling, and like stimulation, everything, no silence, all of that stuff.
Sorry, and you probably mentioned, do you teach religion to them too? Or are you
I do.
primarily
That is
religion?
actually
Okay.
my full-time
Primary
job.
religion
Yeah,
teacher. Okay,
sorry. I
yes.
should have, I don't think I said that. So we
I
have
think I
enough.
remember that, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
So.
no, you got it. So we have a big enough, we have a junior high team that works together for those 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And there's 2 of each class. So that's actually my full-time job. So I teach 2 of every section. So I teach religion full-time.
Has the trend of how you engage them in religion class changed over the years? With the new generations coming in and like with the attention problem that you kind of mentioned.
Yeah, I would say so. I also have like I've always taught middle school. My subject has changed a little bit. So I'm in year 7 in this position. And then I taught 5th grade in a Catholic school for actually 7 years before that. And so it's a little hard to like compare, but like you can still see the trends, if that makes sense. We also we're a school that has access to really good technology, and I feel like the teachers are using it in a good way. You know, we're not just like, we don't just have the kids on tablets all days or something like that, but we have some really good technological resources we're trying to use well. But I'm going to admit that honestly, even though I still use them and, you know, use our smart boards and all of that type of thing, I actually more and more, especially with my 8th graders, am pulling them away from that and like making them like, I was grading something tonight and a friend saw it and it was like physical paper that they had to physically write on, and they had to use both a physical Bible and a physical catechism to get it done. And that's really good for them because it makes them slow down. They can't just copy and paste stuff. They learn to like interact with the text and navigate it, which is what we want later in life, right? Like you and I, when we're looking up a Bible verse real quick, when we're researching something, of course we're going to, you know, Google it or use a website. But I want them to be able to open up their Bible and be so comfortable with it that they can navigate it and find passages. So that is one thing I really do try. And I feel like I'm like moving more in that direction of like using physical. Does that make sense? Like that I'm not a non-technology, you know, we use technology quite a bit, but to make sure that, especially when it comes to things like scripture and the catechism, that they're like interacting with the real text.
Yeah.
So good. And do you feel like, are they kind of, after the initial frustration maybe of that activity, are they drawn to certain things that you're discussing? Are they drawn to like more scripture, or are they eating up the catechism? Are they loving the lives of the saints? Like what is piquing their interest right now that you feel like, okay,
my 8th graders would laugh if they heard you say like, you know, enthralled with catechism. They would not say that right now because so I introduced them to it in 6th grade, and like a lot of using the catechism is learning how to navigate it, right? Because it's very different than a lot of other texts that they're used to. And so then we use it pretty heavily in 8th grade. And so I don't think they would say that they adore it, but they're getting better at it. So really, I think if I was going to pick something that was like non-technology that the kids tend to kind of be enthralled with, if you follow me on Instagram, you know I share a lot about Catholic books, about good Catholic books. And I am not opposed to having, like, I have literally hundreds of picture books in my middle school classroom because a good picture book is timeless and ageless. And so that is actually one thing that is really cool, especially I feel like with my 6th and 7th graders, because they maybe don't have their like guard up quite as much, is that when they're finished in my classroom, they are incredibly eager to go pull books off of my shelves. And so regularly you see these middle schoolers who normally would have their, you know, their face buried in their phone. They're like sitting and flipping through a Catholic graphic novel or a picture book. And that is really, really cool to see because it's so accessible to them and it's beautiful and it's a format that they're comfortable and familiar with. So I know that doesn't quite exactly answer your question, Monica, but it is kind of neat to see them, that it's like they're not afraid to interact with that content in that way. And through that, they are discovering truths about the Catholic Church. They are like, that is a great way for them to learn about the lives of the saints rather than like a big, heavy book that they have to read. So they're like quickly becoming more familiar with saints. So that's actually one of my very favorite things to do in my classroom.
And I would say, you know, like at home now too, that is one thing that we try to have is just like books laying around. We have our coffee table and it's got like a little like shelf underneath it. And I'm always just trying to like make sure that there are books on it, you know, and as they wander through, sometimes they'll plop on the couch and then they're bored and they're like, oh, that was bright and colorful. So they pick it up and they end up like reading it or asking about it or, you know, it's kind of nice. We have several readers in the house now that are a little older now, so they can actually read themselves. But I think like that's a great tip, I think, for anybody is just to have that available, like have it accessible, have it out, have it around.
Well, because when
And
you guys are homeschooling, of course, there's certain times where you're like, okay, we have a lesson about this saint that we're going to learn about. But there's something like beautifully organic about just having it available, and at their own pace, their own interest, they pick that up. And I think that sometimes that's what sticks with them more. And whether it's the element of choice or whether it's it was the right time, right place, like they were receptive to it. I've had some really cool things happen. Like I had an 8th grader who read you probably are familiar with the boy who became Pope. I think I'm getting the title right. Like, is it become or became? That's about Pope John Paul II, and it's a beautiful, but it's truly a picture book, right? Like it really looks like something you'd read to a 2nd or 3rd grade class. You know, the illustrator worked for Disney, so it kind of has that that wonderful, right? Okay, so at some point in 6th grade, this boy picked up that book when he had some extra time, and it became his like favorite book. You know, and he was an athlete. He was pretty tough, really popular, not what you would normally expect. And I remember like the following year we had like a Catholic book fair, and he's like, I got my grandpa to buy me a copy of Miss Bogner. So I got my own now. It was super cute. And so then he ended up going on to pick Pope John Paul II for his confirmation saint when he was 14. And it was because of that book, that picture book that he was way too old for, but the story impacted him in a way that if I had handed him like a biography, you know, this big long chapter book about Pope John Paul II, it probably wouldn't have hit him in the same way. So anyways, it's that kind of thing is really cool to see. And of course, I'm only privileged to like, you know, this much of those connections, but I'm still making it accessible to them. So hopefully those encounters can happen.
Wow. That's awesome.
I love that.
I mean, I know you guys love JP too, so
we do.
It's a cool story.
Oh, super fans.
We actually were asked to endorse like the 20th anniversary of that book.
Yeah, like the new edition. So we got to plug it because we just it's our son's.
It's a great book.
It's our son John Paul's favorite book about Saint John Paul.
It's so it like makes me cry. I can't read it out loud without getting emotional. It's so beautiful.
It's so good. And I just think too, like having the children's books available too is a great. We love conversation starters, right? That's one of our main goals with our ministry is to just like put things out there so that conversations can start. And I feel like they're a really great way to start conversations with your kids too, that they might ask a question about a certain scene or a certain character, you know, and these are real people, but they read it like that. And they then are like, wait, that really happened. And then they like are curious. And I think it piques their interest enough, and it makes it, simple is like not the word that I really want to use, but kind of simple enough that you're like, hey, let's chat about this, you know, and see where it goes. So I love that.
And like we use storytelling, right, to share our faith. So it's like kind of building like a bridge to allow you to do that without being like, okay, everyone sit down, like gather around. We're going to tell they get to kind of be the one who initiates the conversation. And then you get to find out what caught their interest, what they're wondering about, what curiosities popped up as they're reading. And then even like little ones, like you can do the same thing with pictures, right? They might need a little more like, you know, filling in of the gaps, but a good picture book, like the illustrations tell as much of the story as the words do. And so that's another thing I love about picture books is like they really can be used for any age in different ways, of course. But whether, I love picture books. Love them so much.
Yes, so good. Well, thank you for sharing that. So that I think is a good segue then. Tell us all about Lent and Holy Week. I know this is, well, people listening might not know. I know this comes after all about Advent, which is beautiful. It was so lovely with the illustrations and so helpful. And I know a lot of people were like, and now I would like a sequel. But yeah, tell us about all about Lent and Holy Week.
So funny story. So when this project started, all of my books, so this is my 5th book, which is another thing that is like weird to say out loud. All of my books have started from like a need that like my publisher saw, like, so it wasn't like, I didn't like sit down and write this book and then pitch it, which is sometimes the process that happens. But it was more so a conversation between my editor and I about like, what is not out there that Catholic families and Catholic classrooms need? Because, like, and I know we've talked about this with your Joseph children's book, right? Like they're just like, there's like, he's Joseph, right? It's Saint Joseph. We need more books about him. And so you guys really filled a gap in that when you made your book. So if I'm going to take the time to write a book, like I want something that does not already exist in my classroom, and it's filling something that I've spent a lot of years talking to a lot of kids about Catholic things. So here's what a tool that we can use to help share that with them, if that makes sense. So when we started brainstorming this like liturgical year, it's a series now, I guess, since there's 2 books, we were kind of inspired by, those good old DK, like nonfiction books, that are filled with like photographs and information. There's like, like all about London and things like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yes.
So we were
Yes.
kind of going from this like sort of infographic style where it would really present a lot of information in a compact area, but sort of be broken up in like really short chapters that are maybe just a page or two long and then filled with sidebars and illustrations, things like that. That was the original inspiration. So we did all about Advent and Christmas. And the goal with that was that there are a lot of beautiful, good picture books about the Nativity, about the story of Christmas, whether it's a little more factual or whether it's like the sweet stories where they have like a fictional character who like gets to kind of witness the Nativity. And those are wonderful. But and then there's also some like, there's Advent devotionals, like going through the Jesse tree together as a family. But they're really, I really don't know of another book that explains the season of Advent and the traditions that we have as Catholics, and most importantly, why we have those traditions and how they all fit together in this season of preparation that leads to Christmas. And so that's what we set out to create, was more of the why and a little bit of like the nitty-gritty of the how, as opposed to like the devotional. It's not that, or the storybook. It's not that either. And so all along when we made the Advent book, it was always planned that there would be a second one about Lent, but you don't really ever advertise that until it's like real. That's kind of an unwritten rule in book publishing, right? Until it exists, you don't go too far in advertising it. But it is so funny. Of all of my books, I think the biggest question I've gotten, probably times 10, is, okay, when can I get my hands on All About Lent? Like, when is it coming? So I'm very happy to get to share that it is. I actually have a sample copy right here. So I know if you're just listening, you won't be able to see it, but if you're watching on YouTube, you'll get to see it. So the cool thing about these books is that, like I said, it's meant to be something that tells the story of the whole season. It's not dated. It's not a devotional. It really is meant to help equip the adult, so the parent, the catechist, the teacher, to really dive into those devotions with kids and explain, here's the traditions and here's why we have them and here's what it means and here's how it all points to the overall message of Lent and Holy Week, which is that Jesus came to save us. So that's the big idea behind the books.
I love it. I love the like you said, the little breakouts on the sides of the pages and stuff. It'll be like a yellow box with a picture, and it's maybe a symbol that you see in. I'm thinking of Advent, the Advent book, because we have that one.
You'll have this one soon, hopefully.
Yes, it's on the way. I know, but yeah. So it's like I know, at least for my boys in particular, they love those books like that, where
Mm-hmm.
it, trying to make it like think of not necessarily an encyclopedia, but it's like all about basketball book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll have these chapters, but then on the side it'll be like, and the point guard does blah 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 blah, you know, and kind of like breaks it out in a way that the kids' eyes talking about their attention, right? And you're like, here's a snippet here, and here's a snippet here, and it all ties together in the text in the middle.
Yeah, you got
so it. I love the formatting, because I think it's engaging and it's easy for a kid to pick up and look at the whole thing, or to just open up and look at this one section and really get a lot out of a short section too.
Yeah, which is exactly what we were going for. So when you like open it up, it's not meant to be read from cover to cover. I think that would actually be kind of weird, to be honest. But there's kind of these little like short chapters that are 2 or 3 pages. And so you can read the main text and kind of, okay, what's the deal with Ash Wednesday? Why do we get these dirt smudges on our forehead? So you could, like, at the dinner table the night before Ash Wednesday or whatever, you could read the main text of that chapter and get the message across in like 2 minutes. But then on that same page or in that same area, there's also little sidebars that talk about, what does the Latin phrase memento mori mean, and like how to talk about that with kids. It has a spot where it gives you all of the readings that you'll hear at Ash Wednesday every year. So why not open up your Bible and read one of those together? It has the prayer for the faithful departed, which is just such a beautiful connection, like with not only the season of Lent, but specifically Ash Wednesday. And then there's a little did you know box about why the date for Ash Wednesday changes every year, because everyone always wants to know that. So again, it's like those high interest topics where if you've got younger kids with this book in particular, you could just read just those like 2 sections and get the point across and be done. Or your older kids that are curious about something, or they ask you a question, you're like, that's a great question. I don't know that, but we're going to find out. This book hopefully will help the parent, catechist, teacher to be able to like have not only the right answer, because I know you can find the right answer, but to have it like right there at your fingertips in kid-friendly knowledge that isn't watered down. Because I am like a big advocate of like, let's give them the full truth,
Yeah.
but we just are going to give it to them in language that is appropriate for them and in a bite-sized piece.
Yes. Perfect. When All About Advent came out, that was actually the Christmas gift that I gave one of my kids' teachers, because I was like, oh, this is so them, right? And so you were saying catechists and teachers and parents. So for our audience, a lot of you might be thinking like, okay, this will be a great resource for our family, but I also want to encourage you, like, this could be a really good gift to give your child's teacher, to give their catechist, to give their youth minister or what have you, because so if you're going to order one, order two, so that you could give it to somebody else who's fostering and helping your kids, right? And I think so that's my little plug for purchasing the book.
That's a great idea. I would like buy one, get one.
Yeah.
I also have heard, this is cool, unintended, but really cool. I've heard from several people who have used it with RCIA, OCIA now with like adult converts. And like, they're like, this is perfect because it helps us to explain. The liturgical year is kind of complicated, right? If you're not familiar with it and like the ins and outs of how it all works and all of the traditions that we sort of take for granted, they're like, this is perfect. It is the exact amount of information that we need to give them. And then they can keep learning and growing, right? That's the whole point, is that we do this every single year. And you can always learn more, but let's start with the basics. So that's kind of cool. Again, unintended, but really neat that people have purchased it to use with their adult catechesis as well.
Yeah, that is a great idea too, because you're the people who are preparing for their sacraments, they're getting so much information all at once.
Overwhelming.
And like you said, for some of us who have been experiencing this, we're like, oh, it's Lent again, and for them it's their first Lent. Like, this is a big deal.
No, and I really like that the book is about the why, right? Because I know a lot of homeschool families, and our family can fall on this too. They know what we do during the liturgical year, but I don't know if they'll know as deeply, like, why do we do this? And this is not just a tradition the Ortegas do, but this is a church tradition. So I like that this book provides that for them. We may just leave it out and Colby will read.
It'll be on the coffee table shelf that underneath for sure.
Perfect.
Yeah. Can you share anything else? So I'm remembering your previous books that you kind of have partner books. You kind of have these books that go together. Can you share anything, I guess, from your inspiration? I know you're saying, I'm trying to articulate all my thoughts into one sentence and it's not working. So you have your free resources that you love to share with others, and you have your books that, like, obviously you need to sell because they need to be made somehow. They need to be produced somehow. But it just seems like you really see the big picture of how things are connected, and that's why you have your Jesus and your Mary through the year with Jesus and through the year with Mary book and these books. Can you share with me how you try to, I don't know, live that way and bestow that on others, like this holistic idea of your faith and not like categorizing and I don't know, am I making any sense?
No, it's a really good question. It's just a really big question, Monica. I think, okay, I'm going to try to capture and like try to keep this to like a short, 2-minute answer. I think that as Catholics in the modern day world, so we're kind of coming back to a little bit of maybe like, this would maybe be another topic of conversation for like current trends I see in the classroom, is that we as a modern people tend to put ourselves into compartments, right? Like I am a soccer player and I behave this way while I'm at practice. And then when I'm at my grandma's, I'm a grandson and I do this. And when I'm in the classroom, I do this, right? And then when I'm at church on Sunday, I do this. Like, we kind of compartmentalize ourselves. And as adults, we maybe even are worse at that than kids are, And so I think that the main like motivation or inspiration for me behind the resources I put on my blog, behind the books I've written, is really to invite Catholic families and Catholic classrooms and Catholics of all kinds into like a holistic view of your faith, that you are not just Catholic for an hour on Sundays. You are not just Catholic for the 45 minutes you're in catechism class or Miss Bogner's religion class or whatever it is. Like, you are Catholic, period. Because our faith should encompass everything we do and say and how we treat people and the decisions that we make. And I think one of the beautiful gifts that the church has given us to help us to do that is the liturgical year. And I know that maybe you're like, Katie, you went too far with that. But like, I really do mean that, because the liturgical year is like a retelling of the story of the life of Christ and why he came and why we are living as Catholics and why it matters. And it's not just, unfortunately, like the rise of liturgical living, that has kind of come about because of social media, which is awesome. Because one quick aside, like, I did not grow up living liturgically. I'm a cradle Catholic, come from a devout, strong Catholic family. God bless my parents. I'm so grateful for our faith. But like, my mom was an adult convert, and like, we didn't have an Advent wreath growing up. We didn't go to Stations of the Cross. We prayed before meals and went to mass on Sundays, and that was kind of it. You know what I mean? And praise the Lord, like, all of my siblings are practicing, they're raising their families in the church, you know what I mean? Like, but it wasn't because of like, we weren't doing cute crafts about Lent. We weren't having like liturgically themed meals or special snacks on saints' feast days. We weren't doing that stuff. But the rise of social media and like, whether you want to, bloggers and things like that, I think sometimes when people hear liturgical living, they think it's all about cute crafts and fun snacks and songs that you sing, and it's really only meant for families with young kids. And that is not true at all. The liturgical year is for every single one of us from womb to tomb, because the liturgical year flows out of the Mass, right? Like, everything that we do starts and ends, starts and begins, flows from the liturgy at the Mass, and then we're living it in our daily life. It should affect our prayer. It should affect our work. It should affect how we feast and how we fast. And so if we are viewing the liturgical year as something that is who we are as a whole, right? Like, who we are holistically as Catholics, it's going to affect everything. So to circle back, that's my why. Like, that's why I want to share these resources, because I want families, I want catechists, I want teachers to feel like they can bring the fullness of the truth of the church into their daily lives, not just in catechism class, not just while they're doing the religion chapter in their textbook, but it is actually who we are, and it's like how we live and breathe and move.
Love it. Wow.
I don't know if that's what you were
got
asking,
it.
but
No,
that's where I went.
That's what she was going
That
for.
was what I was
exactly-
going for. No, I just love everything that you do and how it's like integrated, and it's more than just it's more than the surface level. And I think that, and I appreciate that so much. So thank you for articulating that so well. Because I think that that's what we hope for all of these Catholic families listening, is that your faith is infused in everything. Like, yeah, it's not compartmentalized. It's not this little activity. But it's the why, like the deeper why. And it comes from who you are and whose we are. So that was so perfectly summarized. I appreciate that. Thank you for understanding me and my.
I did. I was picking it up. I got it.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you would like to share with us? Where can people find you? Where can they get the book? All this good stuff.
All the details. Okay, so probably the most important, I'm going to give you all the free stuff. So my website is looktohimandberadiant.com. If I would have known what was going to happen, I would have probably chosen a different website name all those years ago, but here we are. You can also Google Katie Bogner and it'll pop up, which is kind of weird, but again, great. So everything on my blog is free. I have so many Lent resources. So honestly, if you're an adult, like looking into Lent and being like, oh my gosh, am I just going to give up chocolate again? Like, I've got things that'll help you. And then of course, things for families or classrooms. So there's that. Social media, I'm the most active on Instagram. So I'm Catherine Bogner there. Lots of book recommendations and things like that. And then my books are all published through the St. Paul Center. So that's a great place to find them. And then I always encourage people to ask for them at your local Catholic bookstore. If they probably don't have it, but they can certainly get it for you. And then you're supporting them. So good to have those brick and mortar stores open in our areas and neighborhoods. So always good to ask for them, ask there, and then support them as well.
Yeah. And we'll make sure to put everything in the show notes as well.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you, Katie, so much. We really appreciate you joining us late in the evening, so that our kids could be asleep while we.
I'm a night owl, so I love this. Is great.
Perfect. And we hope great success for this book. That lots of families and lots of classrooms have it in their possession, and that you have a wonderful and fruitful Lent. Like maybe you can
guys
rest a little bit this Lent after.
I know,
this is
after all the
happening.
prep, I do feel like it's going to be an interesting Lent because there's so much work ahead of time with launching a book about Lent that I'm like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, Lent is going to actually feel like peaceful. It's
Yes.
I'm going to go into the wilderness with Jesus. I can't wait. It's going to be
Excellent.
great.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you guys. And all right, everyone, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you at the next episode.